Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and having a good weekend so far. Welcome back to another breakdown video from myself. Today we have the AUDUSD New York position to go over, so the sell from last week. This should be quite a nice one to go over simply because it's just absolutely textbook. It's just super clean, super clear. There's no complexities really there. It's just all nice and clear. So let's get started as we always do. So first things first, what we need to do as always is to find our ranges. So first thing I do quickly do is just zoom out and make sure we're not in a massive range. You can actually get caught out sometimes. So this is quite a good example here. So when you have say this wasn't a pullback here, when you have like a massive range like this and then your session opens, sometimes you can get caught in minor structure without even realizing it. So it is a good idea just to zoom out, but in this situation we're absolutely fine. So what we can do is mark out our major ranges. So we had this low, the low broke, we had this high, the high broke, low broke, high. Okay, so at this point here we have our major low. Now, even though I don't trade situation 3 myself, we still need to understand that our structure is the same rules as always. I think this causes a little bit of confusion sometimes. Even though I mark out structure from a previous session, it's not that I'm going to trade that. It's just that, the structure is always going to remain the same, completely rule-based, okay? So in this situation, even though we mark out a situation 3 low, let's just use a hypothetical situation of this happens. Okay, this isn't obviously going to be our session intent. All we're now doing is creating our session low at this point. Okay, at this point here. And then what we can do is obviously wait for an intent to the high side with a structure point that's created inside the session, or wait for a break of structure to that downside, and then that's going to be your session intent. Okay, so even though we're not trading situation 3, or I don't myself, you still need to be aware of where that structure is being created from. Okay, so let's continue to play and wait for the high to form. Okay, so at this point here we get our high. How do we know we get our high? We know we get a high because we have a body break of the previous candle, right? So we use the highest wick to map that out. And at this point here we have our situation 1 or our major structure high and low. Okay, let's continue to play. No, not yet. Okay, at this point here, what do? We have a body break to the upside after our major structure is confirmed. So what's that going to do? That's going to create our situation 2 or our minor structure low. Okay, so now we have major, major, minor. Okay, let's wait for that minor high to create itself. Okay, and we get that minor high and we get that break of structure at the same time. That's absolutely fine. So essentially what we now have is we have our major range, we have our situation 1 high within the session, our major low, however that would obviously be situation 3, and now what we have is we have a situation 2 presenting itself. Okay, so what we can now do is mark out where we want that mitigation point to come to, so where our successful retrace needs to come to. Okay, so that for me is going to be this candle. Obviously this is the whole OB, and then what do? I always refine it to the imbalance. It's going to be there. At this point here, we can check the next time frame, so let's check that. And what we can actually see here is we have the exact same, well, almost the exact same major structure. Okay. However, our minor structure slightly changes because now we can accept a mitigation to the whole candle, okay, as opposed to just that, okay. So a question I do get a lot to be fair, is how do you know which time frame to follow? I never know which time frame to follow. It's not like I come on in the morning and I say, okay, I'm going to follow 2 minute or I'm going to follow 4 minute. It's simply looking and waiting for each or any time frame to give you the rules to follow, okay. So in this situation, because we have this 1 minute here, however, our 2 minute is exactly the same. However, we have a slightly bigger POI or reaction zone for that successful retrace. I'm now going to follow the 2 minute, okay? Because essentially it's just a higher time frame that's in play at this point, okay? So let's continue to play. Okay, so what do we do at this point? We create our situation 2 or our minor structure low. We know that because why? We body broke above. And what's that body break also doing? That body break is also now mitigating that IM, okay? So now essentially all we need to see is a reaction from here and then a follow through to create that second break of structure which we need, okay? So let's continue to play and see what happens. And then we get a beautiful reaction. We get a wick into between the open and the 50% and then a really nice momentum candle to the downside, okay? So now what we can do is mark out that. Now, I'm not interested anymore in that major structure because our minor structure has played out first. So let's get rid of that whole box and let's draw on our mitigation. Now, we don't need to do anything with that mitigation. Why not? because the reaction point is between the open and the 50% of this candle. That candle has imbalance, so it's unmitigated anyway. It's completely fresh, so we don't need to do anything. That's absolutely fine. Okay, so what's our next point of call? Our next point of call is to mark out the successful retrace. Now, again, lovely and clear, nice clear IM, nice clear successful retrace. We have imbalance, and obviously we have our last up candle, as I call it, the last candle that broke the previous high. Okay, so from this perspective here, from this base time frame, this is a completely valid trade. However, as you know, I like to refine. That's too big of a POI for me. Generally speaking, I'll go straight to the seconds time frame just because I want the smallest, most precise reaction possible. If you're not too bothered about precise reactions, what you can also do is just use the 1 minute as a minimum and then go from there. However, this is a good example here of what you'll see. Okay, so let's just mark out the whole 2 minute, and then we'll do what I did, and I believe it was the 5 seconds. So this is perfect. So what we can see here is within that range, and we need to remember that when we refine, it needs to be inside that range. Okay. So the first POI that we can see is we have our 5 second low, which is here. Our 5 second low breaks at this point. Where's our range high? Our range high is here because we have our body break to the upside. So this is a valid POI to go from. Okay. And then secondly, essentially I was looking at this point up here. Okay, so we have a nice move here, a nice pullback, and then a nice move again. However, this on the 5 second isn't an OB, okay, because there's no break of structure here because no low is formed. So then I moved up one, okay, and now what we see is on the 15 second we have this low, okay, and this break structure at this point. Where's our range high? Our range high is this wick because of this body break here. So now what we can see is on the 15 second we have this potential OB as well. Now, what I was saying about the base time frame and going straight from the 1 minute as opposed to the seconds, what we'll see is, so let's get rid of the 2 minute for now. So these are the two POIs that we've established. If we go back to that 1 minute, if we're not aware of that 5 second POI, can you see what's happening? So what we would use on the 1 minute is this, okay? But price actually ends up reacting from this 5 second. Now, we don't use conflicts, etc. on a refinement time frame. The only rules for our refinements is, number one, it has to be a major OB, okay? It has to cause a break of structure on a major scale. And secondly, it has to be within the base time frame range. Okay, so it needs to be within that 2 minute OB itself. If we did just use the 1 minute, then we actually would never have seen or understood why price can react from here. Does that make sense? So let's just move our second POI back up again, and then we'll go back to our base time frame. Cool, and continue to play. Just sort my phone out, notifications. There we go, perfect. So let's continue to play. So what have we done here? We've created another low. So let's mark out that low. Okay, so why is that important? We need to obviously understand that the third break complexity, the fourth break, how it invalidates, etc., our initial target. So if we do get into a trade, or our range completion. So we need to understand our mark when that low is formed. So let's continue to play. Get a wick to the downside. This is actually a quick one that I will cover. I think a few of you got confused. I had a couple messages saying, why was this not the low? So once your low is formed and confirmed by that body break, you then don't move it. Okay, that's anchored as such onto that wick until you get another body break. So even though you create a lower wick, because that low is already confirmed by that body break, that low does not move. Okay, just a little quick one. Continue to play. Okay, so now at this point here, what happens is we get a nice wick into our initial point of interest. Now here we have two, so we have obviously the 5 second and the 15 second as well. So let's go straight down to our 5 second and see what is happening. So at this point here, it's quite a funny one, where it's one of those where you have quite a large range. So let's just have a look at the 5 second. So on the 5 second, what we can see is we have our low, which is here. And we know this is our low Y because we have our body break to the downside, right? I think that's nice and clear. Let's just check our 15 second and see what's happening there. So what we can see on the 15 second is essentially we can't use it, okay, because our range is from here. Oh, that's weird with the magnet on. And here. Okay, so we don't need to worry about any other time frame. Okay, again, it's the same with 30 second. Let's move up to 30 second. Exactly the same thing. Our major range is all the way up here and all the way down here. So we're only going to be interested on this time frame on the 5 second, and it does make it easier, to be fair, when you only have one time frame to watch. You don't have to flick through and see, obviously when that break of structure happens, if there's a conflict, etc. But let's just continue to follow the 5 second at this point here. So all we need now is a break of that low. So what we can see here is we have our low, which is here. And we know this is our low Y because we have our body break to the downside, right? I think that's nice and clear. Let's just check our 15 second and see what's happening there. So what we can see is we can't use it, okay, because our range is from here. Okay, so what we can see is we have our low, which is here. And we know this is our low Y because we have our body break to the downside. So all we need now is a break of that low. Takes a while. Get some more pullbacks. Just move our line over. I think there's one more move and then we get the break. Okay, perfect. So what have we had? We've had that 5-second reaction. So that 5-second reaction from our 5-second POI. Okay, we've then found our major structure low. And remember, entries are always off major for myself. And then we've waited for that low to break. Okay, so now what do we need to do? We need to identify where that break came from. I think this is extremely clear here, where we have this POI here. Okay, so this is the OB that caused that. We're quite far away, so we've got time to set a limit as opposed to market execution. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And our 1 pip minimum for myself, you could have got away with, I mean, no, I wouldn't use half a pip there. There's just not enough room. I get asked sometimes, why didn't you use half a pip? To be honest, I just like a little bit of extra room. I'm not too bothered about the changes. Obviously, half a pip is going to increase your charges by quite a lot as well, your commissions on each trade. One and a half, or two for me is just what's comfortable for me. So that's just what I always do. You'll never see me use under 1 pip. But again, it's up to you. If you want to use lower, that's completely fine. But one and a half, and two works for me. And it's also easier to calculate that lot size when you are setting your limit. So let's continue to play and see what happens. Now, because we are quite close to the base low here, so let's go back up to 2 minute quickly just to understand what's happening. So we've created our 2 minute low, we've had our reaction point, and we've had our break. We have our limit set. Now what we do need to understand is if now this goes and breaks our base low again, then that 5-second entry is invalidated, okay, because you need to be within the range. You can't then take that base time frame range out and continue to hold that limit. So that's the only thing we do need to be aware of here. So let's continue to play. So all we're waiting for now is either that base low to be taken out or to be triggered in. So at this point we are triggered in and we need to see where our major low is. The only reason why we need to see where that is obviously for our break even point. So we created a low at this point here because we had this body break here. So there we go. Sorry, my phone's going again. There we go. So again, why is it not this wick here? So one low at this point here, we then get this body break. So let me just go back. This is quite similar to the last point. So what we can see here is we've confirmed our low on this wick by this body break here. So then once we do this, exactly the same as the base time frame before, yes, we create a lower wick. However, our low is already anchored as such, as I like to call it. Okay, so at this point here, we're triggered in, and now all we're waiting for, very simple, we either get stopped out or we go break even. Okay, let's continue to play. It was quite a close one, to be fair, with the stop loss. We did get a little LG or whatever you want to call it above, but at this point here, we go break even. We go break even. Why? Because we've caused another major break of structure. Okay, so let's just drag this out. And now we've gone break even, and what's our next thing to do? Our next thing is to find our partial point. So for me, as you know, it's always at 1 to 10. So let's just drag that out. Okay, perfect. And then let's go back to the base time frame. So at this point here, very simple. What happens now? We either get broke even or we take a partial at our partial point. As I always say, you know, if you're on prop firms or if you're on challenges or whatever it might be, if you're just starting out and you're building up your capital, you can close all of it here. You can close all of it at 1 to 5. Okay, it's quite a personal matter when it comes to actual in-trade management. For me, 1 to 10 is just a nice way to do it. Obviously, all last year I took half of it off at 1 to 10 and then held the rest for a higher time frame point. This year, from previous breakdowns, what you'd have heard is I've slightly changed it. So I'm taking 9R at 1 to 10, then holding 10% based on the higher time frame. So we can speak a little bit about that afterwards. So let's continue to play. Okay, so what happens here? We hit that 1 to 10 point. 90% is close. That's a 9R return for me because I obviously risk 1%. Very close to getting break even at this point. Well, not very close, to be fair. It was a few pipettes away. But yeah, lovely trade. I think this is a good example of just absolutely textbook. You know, really clear IM, really clear mitigation, really clear successful retrace, and really clear POI. There's a little bit in there about why I personally don't just go to the 1 minute and then leave it at that point, because if we did, we'd obviously have marked this and we'd have completely missed this trade, because obviously we're not aware there's a 5-second POI here. A little bit about following your ranges. So at this point here, we were only interested in the 5-second because we didn't have breaks on the 15 or 30. obviously then our break-even point and our partial point. Now, what am I doing with the remaining partial of this trade? So I just had a little scroll out, to be fair, and just had a look at the higher time frame. So there wasn't really much to target on the daily, because all we have on the daily is obviously this break of structure here, and then this little pullback at this point here. However, on the weekly, it is quite clear. So if I get rid of this, what we can see on the weekly is we've recently had, get rid of this, we've had this break of structure, this break of structure. Okay, that's interesting. Is that a replay mode? Oh no, it's just because of the zoom. Okay, it looked like that wicked touch, but it hadn't. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Perfect. This break of structure here, we've come up, we've almost mitigated this OB here, but we didn't quite. We just missed it. You can see a tiny gap. We then create a new low from this body break here. This leg then comes to mitigate that POI, so we have some sort of mitigation or order flow coming in. So now what we can expect is essentially this low now to be taken out. So that makes perfect sense to me, to hold that remaining 10% of volume down to that point there. So let's just drag this out because it's tiny on these time frames. 3 hour. Perfect. And then what we can do is, I still can't see it. There it is. Looks so funny on these higher time frames, and then drag all the way down. Now, I think some of you get a little bit confused. Why would you hold 10%? To me personally, I'm more than happy to risk, that 1% being break even for, especially when you have a higher time frame structure point, or place to be taken. So for example, this weekly low needs to be taken. Even that 0.1 or 0.10%, whatever you want to call it, a volume at these sort of risk rewards, it's still a big return. So for example, here we're looking at 10% of 491, so it's almost a 50% return on your account if this weekly low gets taken, just from that 0.1 initial risk. So it is worth it for me. You only need a couple of these, even a year, just to make a massive difference. So risking that obviously that 1R, you can just close all of it on a prop firm, etc. Like I said, but for me personally, that is why I hold it, because if you do hit these overall higher time frame targets, if this does come through, then obviously it's going to be a massive boost to that return. But yeah, I hope all that makes sense. I hope it was all clear. Oh, that's moved like crazy. It's over here somewhere. Where was it? Let me have a look. There we go. That's going to annoy me otherwise. There we go. Yeah, I hope that was all clear. I hope it made sense. I think that's an absolutely textbook example. It's been a little bit quieter, hasn't it, over the last month or so. There hasn't been too many like these, but it's like I said in the Discord. I think those periods is where a lot of people give up and jump ship. So they'll see something else that seems to be better. They'll move to that, and then that won't work for them, and then they'll move to something else and move to something else. Whereas if you're patient, if you understand the edge, that this sort of thing is always around the corner. It's why I'm so relaxed. I get quite a lot of messages. There was like a 2-week period, wasn't there, where there was basically no trades at all. People saying, how are you so chill? There's not been anything for 2 weeks. It's because I understand this has come in. I've seen it time and time again, where you have a quiet period and then you get something it's almost difficult to miss. So yeah, it's just all psychology at the end of the day, isn't it? It's what's gonna you can be an amazing analyst, an amazing person on the chart, but if you can't execute and hold your psychology well, then you're not going to do as well as someone who is okay on the charts, makes a few mistakes here and there, but they're really good at executing and really good at being patient. So yeah, as always, any questions, be sure to let me know in the Discord. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will speak to you soon.